Okay, so welcome everyone to this talk, which is part of the NCAD Postgraduate Futures Week. I'm Anna Moran, and I'm the program leader for the MA in Design History and Material Culture. And over the next half hour, we'd like to give you a sense of our program. We'd like to talk to you about the content that we cover, what it's like to do the course. We'd like to introduce you to our course team and to share some student stories, just to give you a sense of what the graduates of our course go on to do afterwards. And we'll also talk to you about how to apply. I'd like to introduce my colleagues. Professor David Crowley, he's the head of visual culture in NCAD, and he also teaches on the MA. And also my colleague Camille Rocca from NCAD Admissions, and Camille will answer any kind of admissions related queries at the end. So this session is being recorded, and I will have a question and answer session at the end, but that will be clipped off at the end, so that won't be uploaded with the rest of the recording to the NCAD website. So just so you know that. Okay, so the MA in Design History and Material Culture, it's a course that explores objects, systems, buildings, and spaces in their contemporary and historic contexts. Over the course of the program, students are provided with skills in the interpretation of objects and buildings, interiors, and central to our teaching is an inquiry into the relationships between spaces, things, users, and makers. And I suppose we're asking, how have we shaped the material world, and how does it shape us? You'll see a selection of objects here. I'd like to give you a sense of the range of material that we're interested in. So our explorations would lead us to encounter the extraordinary and the ordinary and everything in between. So objects that might be understood as luxury goods, and also objects that might be in everyday use, objects made by hand in a workshop by a craftsperson, or objects made in large factories. We're interested in things made 300 years ago, but we're also interested in things made today and in the future. So we're interested in the factors which may be social or economic or cultural or political, which shape the design and use of goods and objects. As part of that, materials intrigue us. We're really fascinated by materials, but also the processes and technologies which are used to mold and shape objects. Our research as kind of design and material culture historians leads us to investigate the ways in which objects are interacted with, how those relationships between users and things are formed and mediated, but also to think about how things were valued or are valued or perhaps not valued at particular points in time. The research we do often leads us to think about material culture through the lens of the everyday. So the ordinary things that are so embedded in everyday routines that they're overlooked, leading us to consider ways in which things enter into and mediate everyday social relations. These are the things that fascinate us. And over the course of a series of themed modules, students are provided with the skills to consider material culture in a critical context. Okay, so what you see here is a list of modules that we offer as part of the MA, and students would do all of these modules as part of the program. The course is set out over 2 years. It's part-time, and students will attend on 1 day per week, and I have another slide later which gives more information on that. But the course itself covers roughly from 1700 to the present day. But rather than being a survey course, what we do instead is we offer a series of very carefully designed 5- and 10-week blocks that drill down into particular themes. And over the course of the MA, students would engage with a wide variety of topics. For example, fashion and textile history, graphic design history, the material culture of everyday life in the 18th century, histories of urban space and technology, histories and practice of making, 20th century Irish material culture, contemporary design writing, and much more. And through those modules, we give students the skills to think critically and conceptually about design and the material world around us. So what does it involve? As I said, it's a 2-year part-time program. The on-site commitment of 1 day per week allows for quite a bit of flexibility, and a lot of the students that do our course are working as well. As it's a part-time program, I should say that some non-EU students might find it challenging to secure an educational visa. You'll have to look into that. But UK students shouldn't have any difficulty in that regard. All the classes are in-person classes, and if we're not in a museum or on a visit, they take place in NCAD on our campus in central Dublin. And you can see an image there of NCAD campus from the front, and you can see our gallery there in the bottom right hand corner. NCAD is very fortunate to have its own gallery space. Okay, so object analysis is actually a really key methodology for us, and it's really important to what we do, and it's something that we teach the students how to do really well, and that equips them to basically apply those skills to any object at a later date. So each module is assessed in some way, either by an essay, sometimes of different lengths, or a presentation. And one of the modules that my colleague Lisa Godson runs is called Key Concepts. And as part of that, students would write quite a long format essay of 5,000 to 7,000 words about one object. And they are very carefully and closely guided by Lisa while doing this, and also other members of the course team. This photo that you're looking at now of the cup is actually a porcelain cup used by Countess Markievicz while being held in a British prison in 1919. But this cup I'm showing you was the subject of an essay written by a student this last year in the current cohort of students. And that student was Susan Horrican, and she wrote a fantastic essay about this porcelain cup, which, look, it's broken, it's been stapled, and it's now in the collection of the National Museum. But I'm showing it to you because I want you to understand how we think about objects, and we very often look at objects as having biographies. So there's a number of stages in the object's life cycle that we might think of when looking at an object like this. We might think of its conception, its design, its production, and its materiality. We'll think about how it's been used, how it was used in 1918-19 when Constance Markievicz was able to use it in a prison, and how was she able to do that. And then we might think about it now as its value, today, as this fascinating material link to the everyday experience of Countess Markievicz. Just to give you a sense of other projects the students are working on, this is an essay written by another student, Emily O'Sullivan, and it's focused on the microwave. So she was responding to an essay title, which was set as part of the Futures module, Futures Design and Technology module, led by my colleague, Rachel O'Dwyer. And she was asked, can artifacts be sexist? And so she chose the microwave, and she wrote a really brilliant essay. So first of all, she started looking at how ideas about gender influenced aspects of its design, its marketing, its use. And then she went on to examine whether this device, and she asked this question, which was once heralded as the greatest cooking discovery since fire. She asked, had this object any measurable impact on domestic labor, or whether it simply reinforced existing associations of women, cooking, and domesticity. So that was the subject of one of her essay, which was a shorter format essay of about 2,500 to 3,000 words. Just gives you a sense of the types of projects that students do. I'm showing you slides, images now from an exhibition which some students organised a few years ago in the NCAD gallery. And I'm just showing them to you so you can see that that option is there for students who are keen to engage with that aspect of their studies. This is 136 hectares, it's the name of the exhibition, and it was led by my colleague, Dr. Lisa Godson, and the exhibition was focused on the material culture of the liberties. Okay, so we're very fortunate on the MA to have really good access to museum collections and curatorial expertise. I should have said earlier when I was talking about the key concepts module and the cup, that cup was in the store, in the museum stores in Collins Barracks. It's not on display, but because of the great relationships that we have with the National Museum and with curators, wonderful curators like Brenda Malone, the students are able to go into the museum stores and have classes in those museum stores and be able to look at objects that are not on display. So each cohort of students goes on a trip to London, and it's fantastic. The itinerary is different every time we go. It really depends on what's on, exhibitions, etc. And we meet with curators. This is a trip that I took the students on, and we were lucky enough to meet with Oriel Cullen, an Irish curator based in the V&A. She's the head of modern textiles and fashion at the V&A. And she did this fantastic session with the students where she invited them to look inside the garments to study their inner construction. And there you can see her there also showing a collection of shoes to the students there. The upper images here, you'll see a handling session at the V&A in the Department of Metalwork, the V&A. And then at the bottom, those images there, you can see there's Leslie Miller, who was the senior curator of textiles at the V&A, and she's teaching the students how to distinguish between different types of 18th century silk, and that took place in the textiles department at the V&A. Just another trip that we did at another session. This was in Russborough House, and Pauline Swords, the head of collections, spent a half day with us at Russborough, and that generosity is something that we see from a lot of curators. And I think because the MA was set up in 2001, so that's 23 years ago, by my late colleague, Dr. Nicola Gordon-Poe. And the program is very established now, and there's a great deal of goodwill towards the MA and the students from the broader kind of academic and museum professionals in Ireland. So we're very grateful for that. So students on the MA have access to really great resources. We have the NCAD library, which has a really brilliant collection of design and material culture texts. But we also have NIVAL on site, the National Irish Visual Arts Library. And this has a really brilliant collection of special archives that relate to Irish design, and so many of them haven't been written about and are just waiting to be researched. There's a lot of dissertation topics waiting to be done in NIVAL. So students also have ALCID cards, which means that they have access to Trinity College Library, UCD Library, the Royal Irish Academy Library, and many more. So they have really good resources to aid them in their research. We're also supported by Canvas, which is an online platform where we can put information up about every seminar, and we can put downloadable readings. So for every seminar, we would expect students to do a certain amount of reading to prepare for the seminar, and we put the readings on Canvas together with maybe some links to online resources, etc. David, I'm showing a slide here of a page from your Canvas. Did you want to say something about this, just in terms of what you're asking of the students?
Sure. So I run a course which is on design writing, and we're kind of interested in developing your writing skills. So we follow some fairly academic conventions, but my background is partly as a design journalist. So one class in this design writing block is we ask you to read an entire issue of the latest, probably we chose Icon, then we'll choose another magazine next year, but basically every page through the advertisements, editorial reviews and so on, to try and understand what design journalism is, to try and think about the pressures of a promotional culture, trying to understand perhaps a little bit around the extent in which design is a critical practice as well. And then we'll do a kind of effectively the seminar is a discussion of that text. So we're really interested in different forms, different registers of writing.
Thanks, David. Okay, so as part of I suppose students, alongside object analysis, in the course of their research, students would use a wide range of different research practices. For example, archival research, ethnographic methods, oral history, philosophical inquiry. You can see there in the slide, there's two photos there of the students, some of the current students in the National Library manuscripts room, and they are reading 18th century inventories and wills and account books. And this is a period that I'm familiar with, and I'm familiar with sources like that. So I was able to spend time with the students, making sure they could read what they were reading. And that sort of deep archival research is really useful and helps them later, even if they're not working on 18th century subjects. Oral history is a really important research method, and in the context of the research design module, where we're talking to students about different ways of researching and what the issues around it, we would talk about both the practical and theoretical considerations to bear in mind when using oral history, when using oral history interviews. So the thesis, students, like towards the end of year one, students are encouraged to start thinking about what they would like to write their thesis on. And they would be encouraged to chat to members of the course team about any ideas that they had. And I suppose through the taught elements of the program, students are given the tools to approach any topic. But then when they start their thesis, they're really well supported by their supervisor. So they're assigned a supervisor, and they would have one-to-one meetings with that supervisor over the course of the process. But the students are very well supported here, and the research that comes out of this course is really, really fresh, exciting. There's a criticality and a rigor to it, which enables students to publish their work after leaving the course, and many as well sort of go on to embark on PhDs. So that's the research that comes out of this course, I have to say, is really, really excellent. Okay, so David, I'll hand over to you, and you might talk about the course team.
I'm just going to say a few words about the people who will be teaching you if you join the program. We're really lucky at NCAD. We have some of Ireland's leading design historians, and I can say this because I'm not one of them. But Hilary is a fashion historian. She's really been a central figure for thinking about dress and fashion, and it's been a very strong theme of the course. In fact, we often have a spine of students running through the program who come because they want to work with Hilary, and dress is a very strong element. Got a question there, Anna. We'll pick that up at the end. We won't let that slip, so don't worry. Then you can see Lisa Godson, who's on sabbatical this year, but will be back in September. I suppose Lisa is a design historian and an architectural historian. In fact, she's away at the moment writing the history of IMA as the long history of the building in terms of its place in, in sort of Irish history. And she has very strong interests in a sort of relationship of politics to architecture. She's also written quite a lot around so-called tropical architecture, so European architectural practices as they spread around the world. Rachel is somebody specializing in digital culture. She's a real expert in the relationship of design to technology. She's just written an amazing book, which has been nominated for various prizes, which is called Tokens, which is really about the future of money as it seems to dematerialize from being a material object in your pocket to being this thing that can be kind of turned into a kind of immaterial digital object. It's a really important book. And Rachel, also, her next book is really on the technology of radio. So she's really at the front of thinking about design and technology. I have a background as a design journalist, but also as a curator. I used to work at the V&A and made exhibitions there. So my perspectives come from a little outside Ireland. And in fact, I'm a specialist in the Eastern Bloc, in communist Eastern Europe. So there might be a little bit of that in the teaching that I offer. Anna, you should introduce yourself because you will do it better than me.
So I work in craft history. I've kind of two strands to my research. I'm interested in 18th century craft, glass in particular, but I'm also really interested in contemporary craft and generally sort of material culture studies. So yeah, and I've been involved in this course for many years, and I can say it's really important to all of us on the course team. We love teaching on this program, and we really enjoy supporting the students and seeing them develop their own research profiles later and keeping in touch with them as well.
Great, so it's a really impressive team. Anna, could we go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So just, I think as Anna's already said, we have very strong relationships with other organizations. We try and do quite a lot of work in partnership with curators and with other organizations that are concerned with design. So our major partner is the National Museum of Ireland, and that object analysis brief that Lisa Godson teaches has usually been based around working with the collection and working very closely with Brenda Malone, who's a curator there. And in fact, we have very, very good working relationships with that team. But we've run a number of projects that also build partnerships out with UCD Architecture or with the Little Museum of Dublin. And those live connections are important for all sorts of reasons. One is that we're really interested in how you acquire sets of skills that go beyond the primary concern with, academic skills, with good research, good writing skills, but we're really interested in how design historical knowledge gets into the world. So partnerships with museums, with publications and so on, that's really important for what we do. And then the next slide, Anna. And just to really emphasize this, there's a whole history of publications that come out through the work that we do. We're part of this wider community of Irish design historians. We also organize events. So 2 years ago with the National Museum in Ireland, we asked this question, what are national museums for? And we ran a major international conference. And we have in planning at the moment something that will happen in partnership with the National Museum during the duration of your study if you come with us. So those external partnerships are really about trying to plug our students into a wider set of ideas, discourses, relationships, and they're really important for your future professional careers as well. Thanks, Anna.
Okay. Thanks, David. So who does our course? I suppose we welcome students from a wide range of backgrounds. We have had students who come from a background in art, fine art or design practice. We've had architects, we've had graduates of art history programs, history, sociology, anthropology, literature, curation. We've had journalists, arts administrators, people who have degrees in economics. We also have a number of people who come from the film studies production area and many more. I thought it might be useful just to profile some students who, some graduates, people who did the course and what they've done afterwards. So this is Lisa Foley, who did the MA in 2011. She wrote her thesis on Limerick gloves, very fine leather gloves, that are so fine they fit into a walnut shell to be given as gifts. Lisa stayed on and did a PhD funded by, after doing the MA, she stayed on, she did a PhD funded by the Irish Research Council, and we would have worked with her to apply for that. And after she then started teaching in NCAD and elsewhere. She taught in the Crawford in Cork, and she also worked as an exhibitions coordinator in Lismore Arts in Waterford. But is now it's soon starting a new position as curator of fashion and textiles at the Royal Museum of Art and History in Brussels. That's a 50-50 role, so she's a curator and a lecturer, so she's also assistant professor of fashion and textiles at the University of Ghent. So that's a really exciting role. In the craft space, we have Frances MacDonald. Frances wrote her thesis on the Kilkenny Woodworkers, a firm of furniture makers. And she came from a sort of arts admin, project management background, but she's now a leading voice on craft in Ireland. She writes for national and international magazines, and she organises these fantastic events, conferences. But just to mention, one is the Making In seminars, which take place every year in Joseph Walsh's studio in Cork, and Frances organises those. So she talks about how, in her testimonial, she talks about how she, that doing the MA enabled her to kind of pursue these areas like writing and lecturing. And she's also curated exhibitions since doing the MA as well. Glenn O'Sullivan comes from a graphic design background, and he wrote his thesis on the tramway system in Dublin, particularly on the navigational aids used to traverse the system, so maps and other kind of navigational aids. Glenn started teaching in IADT, the Institute of Art, Design and Technology, after completing the MA, and then started working at Limerick School of Art and Design, and he's now a lecturer there, and he is program leader of their MA in interdisciplinary design. You'll see in his testimonial, he talks about the camaraderie with your peers, and that's a really important point. You learn so much from your peers, and the sort of mix of people that we get doing this MA, from costume designers to graphic designers, architects, journalists. We have this fantastic mix, and that quality of interacting and developing your network is really important. This is an Irish Times article about Emer Murphy, another graduate of the course, who's the props master at the Abbey. And then, as I said, we have a lot of costume designers doing the MA, and they all absolutely love Hilary O'Kelly's lectures on dress history. And Emer, meanwhile, Downig is a costume designer. She's been the costume designer for many Irish films, including The Banshees of Inisherin, and she talks about how she feels the benefits of having completed the MA in design history and material culture on a daily basis. So it's sort of, it has infused her practice, and she's also, with Farrell Dehan, another graduate, gone on to curate exhibitions of Irish costume, which have travelled to places like Blenheim Palace and the Academy Museum in Los Angeles. So these are just two more. These are alumni stories, which you'll find the full version of on the website. So this is Donna Rose, and we're in Charlton, but you can go to the NCAD website and read those full alumni stories there, along with a number of others as well. Okay, so how to apply. Now, I must say that I want to mention that we have a scholarship which will cover tuition fees, and we have one scholarship which is available to a student on the MA, and that's awarded on academic merit. But if you'd like to be considered for that, you must apply before the 31st of May. Our applications will be accepted after that until the course is full, but if you want to be considered for the scholarship, please do apply before the 31st of May and include a 500-word statement about why you should be considered, why you should be awarded the scholarship. Okay, so on the NCAD website, you will find information about the course, but you'll also see that big Apply Now button, and that's where you can start the online application process. I think that's it.